Here we come with the Aarchi series with Heaven's Publication House. Yes, the chapter. The chapter is chapter 8 and name is the Half Fortune. Oh, what? Picture a poster on Save Trees in the space given here. So children, you all are very creative. You know how to save trees. So make a very bright poster here with trees, colorful green trees, and the people who cut them, the trees who have been cut down, which had been cut down. You can draw those trees also and write some slogans, some good slogans in it. So it's all up to you how creative you are, and you make a bright poster. So we move ahead. What's the lesson about? What was the name of the lesson? The Half Fortune. Not a young man. He was very smart, a young, smart, intelligent man, and a miser who was very greedy. So greedy that he wanted to befool that young man. But how the young man showed his smartness and he overcame that miser. How he handled that miser, we'll see in the chapter. So let's start. On one warm, sunny day, a young man was walking out. As he walked, the sun rose higher and higher. The young man was tired and hot, and he wished he could find a nice cool spot to rest. So a young man was walking, it was very hot, and he was very tired. He was looking for some shade so that he could rest for some time. And if he had conjured it in his imagination, he suddenly came upon that very spot. Like something magical happened, that whatever he thought, he got it. And he suddenly saw that spot where he found the shade. A patch of grass was shaded by a tall Zelkova tree that grew in the yard of a wealthy merchant's house. Now, what happened? He thought that he would find some shaded place, and he got it. And it was a big Zelkova tree which grew in the garden, in the yard of a very wealthy merchant. The tree was tall, its branches long, and now at noon it spread shade outside the garden gate into a tiny park beside the merchant's house. Now, the tree was inside the merchant's garden, but when the shade increased, when the sun was more high and the shade of the tree increased outside also, outside the gate. So there was a space where the shade was coming. So the young man got that shade. The young man smiled and sat in that sweet shade. He said, "Oh wow, I got the shade. I thought of it and I got it." And he sat in that shade outside the merchant's house. Sighed with delight. "This must be heaven," he said aloud. He said, "Oh, I am in heaven now," because he was feeling so hot. At this time, the merchant was arriving. At the same time, when he sat there, the merchant was coming back. He saw the young man sitting there in the shade of his Zelkova tree. He stopped before him. As the merchant was coming back and he was entering his house, he saw the young man outside sitting in the shade, and he stopped there. Now what happened? The merchant said, "Excuse me, you can't stay here," he said. The young man squinted up at him. "I beg your pardon. Why is that?" he asked. When the merchant said that you cannot stay here, you cannot sit here, the young man was very shocked. He stared at him. "Why? Why you are telling me to go from here? I'm sitting in the shade outside your house." "You are sitting in my shade," said the merchant. See what the merchant said. You are sitting in my shade. Your shade? The young man asked. He did not believe that he was hearing. But I'm not sitting inside the gate. The young man said, excuse me, I'm not sitting inside your gate. I'm sitting in the shade of the tree, which is inside your house, but I'm not sitting inside your house. The Velkova tree belongs to me. The merchant said very proudly that the Velkova tree belongs to me. The merchant said, my grandfather planted it and I own the tree and its shade. If you want to remain here, you'll have to pay me for its use. Now see, what the merchant said. He said the Velkova tree belongs to me because my grandfather planted it. And its shade is also mine. So you have to pay if you have to sit in the shade. You want to sit in the shade? You have to pay me for that. The young man was very clever fellow. As I said earlier also, the young man was very smart, very clever. Thought about this briefly. Heard that merchant was a greedy and selfish man. He had heard from somebody that the merchant was very greedy person and he was a very selfish man also. He needed to learn a lesson. Now the young man thought that I would make him learn a lesson. After some moments, the young man said, I'll pay you for your shade, but you have to sign a contract that explains I have purchased the use of your shade. Now what smartness this young man showed, that young man said, okay, I'll pay you for the shade. But you have to sign a contract with me in which it will be written that I have purchased the use of your shade. The merchant smiled. Ah, he said, and he offered an outrageous sum, hoping to end this conversation. Outrageous means a big amount of money. The young man smiled, glad to pay. He said, so long as you sign the agreement, and with that he wrote out a brief agreement on a piece of paper and his best friend, carrying a basket, walked to the merchant's house. They stepped inside the gate. Sorry. Happy to end the conversation, the merchant signed the agreement and took the money. As the young man wrote the agreement, the merchant was very happy to end the conversation and he signed the agreement. As he walked inside, he shook his head and muttered, fool. Who did he say fool? The merchant said fool to that young man. Look, he has purchased the shadow. The shade of the tree. The young man has purchased the shade of the tree. He is a big fool. The young man fell asleep, and when he woke, he hurried home to tell his friends of this marvelous purchase. Then the young man fell asleep. He slept there in the shade, and when he got up, he hurried to his friends to tell something that I had purchased a good thing. Next day was sunny again. The next day was again sunny. The young man waited until late in the afternoon when the sun had moved across the sky and the shade of the Zelkova tree extended into the merchant's yard. Now see the smartness of the young man. It was bright sunny morning, but in the morning he didn't go there. When the shade extended inside the merchant's yard, he waited till then. After that, what he did? He and his best friend, carrying a basket, walked to the merchant's house. Now he called his friend also, and both of them, they walked inside the merchant's house. They stood inside the gate, sat upon the merchant's lawn and unpacked their picnic. Now what he did, as the shade was going inside the merchant's yard, so they went inside, they opened the gate, they went inside and they sat in the lawn and started eating their food. But the merchant looked out of his window and saw the young man eating lunch outside. He stopped. "This is my property," he said. "Can't sit here." Now the merchant saw from the window that these two young men are sitting in the lawn and eating. So he was very angry, very annoyed. He shouted, "This is my property, how you can sit here?" The young man laughed and pulled the contract from his pocket. "You sold me the shade of your Zelkova tree, and as you can see, we are simply sitting in its shade." "That's not what I meant," the merchant raged. Now the young man, he said, "Look, this is a contract. You had signed and you had sold this shade of the Zelkova tree. So now you can't say anything to us. I am sitting under the shade. I'm just using the shade of the Zelkova tree, wherever it goes." The merchant was very angry. "No, this was not the thing which I meant." See, he is getting angry. "But it is our agreement," the young man said. Now the sun moved farther west and the shadow moved towards the porch. Now the shadow keeps on moving, the shade keeps on moving as the sun moves. As the sun changes its place, the shadow also keeps on moving. Now the shade extended to the porch. The young men walked to the porch and made themselves quite comfortable. Both young men, they walked to the porch and they sat there because the shade of Zelkova tree was coming there also. "I'll return your money," the merchant said. "Leave my property." Now the merchant got more annoyed. He said, "Go away from here. I'll return back your money." "No, thank you," said the young man. "I quite like my purchase." The young man said, "Oh, I'm very happy with my purchase. Whatever I have purchased, I'm very happy. I'll pay you double then." The merchant sputtered, and just then he saw the shadow slide into his house. Now what happened? He was getting angry. He said, "I'll pay you double. You just go away from here." And then only what happened? The shadow of the tree got inside the house. The shade of the tree got inside the house. And the two young men opened the door and walked inside. Because they had purchased the shade. So wherever the shadow was going, they were going there only. Now the shadow goes inside the house. They also enter the house of the merchant. The merchant followed them. "I'll pay you triple," he cried. Now he was out of his mind. These two people have entered my house also. Once again the young man shook his head. "What do you want?" the merchant wailed. Once again the young man thought a while. If he had a great deal of money, he could be helpful to the poor. Now the young man thought that if I had a lot of money, what would happen? I would be very helpful to the people who are poor in my village. He looked at the merchant. The merchant was very angry. So he looked at the merchant. "No wish to destroy anyone. Give me half of your fortune." The young man said to the merchant, "Give me half of your fortune." Fortune means the money, the large amount of money which you have, give me half of that. "I'll sign back my right to your shade. I'll give you back your shade of Zelkova tree. But you have to give me half of your fortune." The merchant agreed. And so it was that everyone in the village lived happily ever after. Now what happened? The merchant agreed to it. He gave half of his fortune to the young man, and the young man went to the village and gave the amount which the poor people they wanted, whatever they wanted, they gave them, and those people lived happily forever. So the young man was very smart. How he used the shade of the Zelkova tree. Now let's see what all we remember. Take the correct answer. The Zalcova tree belonged to the, whom did it belong? It belonged to the merchant. So the Zalcova tree belonged to the merchant. The Zalcova tree was planted by the, if you remember, merchant's grandfather. Merchant's grandfather. What I take here? Merchant's grandfather. The young man and his friend sit inside the gate of the merchant's house because why they sit inside the gate of the merchant's house? Because the shade of the tree was coming inside the yard. They wanted to have a picnic? No. The merchant had invited them? No. The shade of the tree had spread into the garden. That's why they entered inside. What do you want? The merchant wailed because he knew he was trapped. Yes, he knew he was trapped. That's why he was shouting. He was so angry. He said, now I have been trapped. I cannot come out of this. So he shouted. Now, fill in the blank. One more warm, sunny day. A dash was walking out. Who was walking out? A young man was walking out. A patch of grass was shaded by a tall, with what it was shaded? The shade was a Zalcova tree. The merchant was dash and selfish man. The merchant was greedy and selfish man. There was a dash between the young man and the merchant. What did they sign? They signed an agreement. So, there was an agreement between the young man and the merchant. Agreement. Now coming to true and false. The Zalcova tree was beside the merchant's house. So the Zalcova tree was beside the merchant's house. No, it was inside the yard of merchant's house. So this is false. The young man was a clever fellow. Yes? You remember the young man was a clever fellow. So it is true. The merchant was a charitable person. No, not at all. The merchant was a very greedy and selfish person. So this is false. The young man and the merchant were close friends. No, not at all. They both were not good friends. So this is also false. Right? Now let's move ahead. Answer the following questions. So we have read the chapter. Now let's see how much we remember and how much we can answer. Why did the young man want shade? And where did he find it? Why did the young man want the shade? Because he was very tired and was feeling very hot. And where did he find the shade? He found the shade outside the merchant's house under the Zalcova tree. Agreement was signed between the two men. What was the agreement signed between the two men? The young man and the merchant signed an agreement. The young man purchased the shade of Zalcova tree. You cannot sit here. Why did the merchant say this? Why did the merchant say this, that you cannot sit here? because he said that the Zelkova tree was his. He owned that Zelkova tree and it was planted by his grandfather. How was the merchant willing to pay 3 times the amount to get back the right? Why he was ready to pay 3 times the amount and get back the ship? Because he never wanted that this young man enters his house. He never wanted to make the young man enter his house. So he wanted to pay full amount of money so that the shed is given back to him. Okay, so now what's the moral of the story? The moral of the story is that never try to befool anybody. Never try to act over smart. Greed never helps you anywhere. If you are selfish, if you are greedy, people much more smarter than you can trap you anywhere. So try to help others. Come out of the greed. Don't be selfish. Be helpful to others, or else people will make fool of you. Okay? Because there are many smart people, many more smart people in the world. Those who know how to take care of these greedy and selfish people. So leave the greed, leave the selfishness, and be helpful to others. Thank you.